I'm Claire Smith. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Deputy Chief Exec. It's lovely to see people on the call, and hopefully when people are watching it later as well. I think it's been recorded, so I hope you enjoy Report Out for this week. We've got a couple of things that really resonate with one of our commitments this time, which is the impact of embedding a robust exit interview process. So we'll hear from Christina on that. And the next one is the work that the Women's CSU have done around the staff support project. So I think I'm going to hand over to Christina. Is that right? Yeah, lovely. Nice to see you, Christina.
Thanks, Claire. So my name is Christina Leddy. I'm one of the matrons in trauma and related services. And this is a piece of work that I did as part of our Leeds Improvement Methods training, which I've come to report out on. Next slide, please. So we all know that exit interviews are recognised as being a really valuable tool that we can obtain feedback from staff and reasons why they've decided to leave us within trauma and related services. As Claire said, it is one of our 7 commitments, and as a CSU, it's a really important focus for us. We've done some absolutely amazing work over the past few years, and from an establishment perspective, we're in the strongest position that we've been in for a long, long time. So it's important to us that we keep hold of them staff. But historically, as a CSU, we just don't seem to have been able to do well at this. So next slide, please. So what actions did we take? So as a senior nursing team, so our head of nursing, Diane, and us as a matron team, we used our regular huddle forums that we already had to discuss what types of barriers we were seeing. And the things we were seeing was there was inconsistencies in who was carrying out exit interviews. Sometimes it'd be a matron, sometimes it'd be a band 6 or a band 7. There was inconsistencies in what questions we were asking. There was at least 2 different templates being used at the time. There was inconsistencies around where we were saving them templates, how we were sharing that feedback. There was a folder set up on G Drive, but it had some feedback in, but not other feedback. There was no real formal invite process. So quite often they would be done at spare of the moment with somebody on a ward saying, oh, you're leaving soon, can we do an exit interview, because they knew they had to do an exit interview. But actually, are we getting any valuable feedback from that type of process? So at the time, I was in a different role. I was the quality matron for trauma and related services at the time, but I've since changed roles. I look after a patch of wards within trauma and related services. At the time, I'd already developed some standard leader work for the role that I was in. So I looked at setting up sort of a standard operating procedure as to how we would conduct this going forward. What we did find was that there was too many fingers in pies, or there was too many cooks spoiling the broth. It all needed to come through one central person and be organised by that one person, and that was me. So we developed a standard operating procedure in that this is now changed slightly, because at the time we also participated in a task and finish group and a pilot that Alison Wilkinson was running. So this is now changed slightly, but we set up a procedure at the time that the line manager would notify me as soon as they knew that they had a member of staff who was going to leave. We decided as a senior team that all nursing workforce exit interviews were going to be carried out by a matron, and we were going to cover each other's patches just to see whether we could get rid of any bias and get some true feedback. I can then check the other matrons' diaries and book an appointment in. We send a personal letter to the member of staff saying that we're sorry to hear that they're leaving. Us in trauma and related services, would they like to meet with us? And it already has a date and timing. I then set up a spreadsheet that the interview then takes place. The feedback themes were all saved to G Drive, and I would then pick out the main themes. But again, this is now changed because we've got a database that we can use as a CSU now. And I will drag rate the main themes. We'd ask staff whether they were happy for us to share the feedback with the line manager, and that would be shared as appropriate. And then once we'd agreed all of this as a senior team, we used our existing forums to then promote it so that line managers knew what we were doing. So we spoke about it in our senior huddles, we spoke about it in our quag forum, we spoke about it our perfect ward. And if we can just go on to the next slide, please. So the small changes really, really do have a massive difference. So I've looked at what our sort of how many interviews we carried out in Q1. In all honesty, we're not entirely sure. We've got records of 6, but that had increased by over 200% in Q2, which it was sort of midway through Q2 that we started this. That had increased to 14, and in between Q1 and Q3, it's increased by nearly 300%. So it's made a really, really big difference. Next slide, please. So what went well? We had excellent team engagement. Everyone was really focused on improving our compliance. We really want to know how staff feel about working with us. Nearly 50% of the staff, though, who took part in the exit interviews, and this is based on the Q3 feedback, which is quite interesting, and this will shape our next steps now. I'd actually worked here for less than a year. They appear to be our apprentice and trainee CSW workforce. So that's going to shape our next steps of what we're going to do going forward. The main theme was career progression, but it was career progression outside of LTHT. And really, really pleasingly was that out of the 17 exit interviews that took place in Q3, there was only one staff member who had any negative feedback, which was really positive about they didn't want to work in TRS. Next slide, please. So what would we do differently next time? I think it's really important to recognise that exit interviews are too late. Once you get to the exit interview stage, it's really, really difficult to change a staff member's mind. One of the things that we did notice that we had some difficulty with was the timeliness of getting notifications that there was a leaver. We might be informed a week before somebody's notice was about to finish, but that's been addressed again as part of the wider trust work, so that now I'm a named person within TRS that I can see LMP notifications when they come through. So that's made things a lot easier. As a CSU, we've already introduced stay sessions. If I'm being really honest, the uptake wasn't particularly good with them. So instead, we've changed them to quarterly meet the team sessions. So myself would go to them and the tri team would go to them. And it was just drop-in sessions to give staff the opportunity to come and speak to the senior team. From March, we are introducing quarterly perfect CSU meetings and going back again to our 7 commitments. It's an open invite to all members of staff within the CSU to come and sit down, have a discussion, but the agenda will be based on the 7 commitments. And then the last couple of things is progression sessions. And we're hoping to be able to roll these out from around April time, so in line with appraisal season. You know, it's really, really important that those members of staff who have left us for career progression, that they know what opportunities are available within the trust for them. But we've got a huge number of staff in TRS to get through. So probably the best opportunity is going to be around appraisal season, and then look to potentially do them 6 monthly. And it also might stop some of them trainee and apprentice clinical support workers from leaving us. And then lastly, in light of the fact that the most leavers from our workforce are the apprentice CSWs and trainee CSWs, our clinical education team from the end of March, beginning of April, have put in specific sessions with them to sit down and talk to them around career progression. Are we meeting their expectations? Was coming to work for us what they thought it was going to be? So hopefully it'll have a really big impact on our retention. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Christina. We'll do questions at the end. I've already written down 3, and I'm pretty sure Jenny Lewis will want to come in with a few as well. So we'll move on, and then we'll come back to you, Christina. Thank you. Are you there, Emma and Hannah?
Sorry, so Hannah couldn't be with us this afternoon. So guys, my name is Emma. I'm one of the Band 7 midwife coordinators on the delivery suite in Women's CSU. And then I also run, I co-lead this project with my colleague Hannah, who is our professional midwifery advocate lead for the CSU. So she is responsible for sort of organising services relating to staff support. So basically this work was kind of born out of we had a few really sad cases within our CSU where there was some learning opportunities for us about supporting our staff better. So we surveyed our staff probably a couple of years ago now. We probably got about a quarter of the CSU responding. There was some real positives in there, in that a majority of people knew where they could access support. There was a majority felt like there was a positive effort to move towards a more positive sort of incident culture. And our PMA service is the equivalent of the professional nursing advocate. It's the professional midwifery advocates kind of came out a while before, so we've been established for quite a long time now, and they were sort of an accessible service. And the most interesting thing in there was that actually vast majority of the time after a clinical incident or a difficult day, most people were actually seeking we're seeking like informal support from each other, and that actually we were really brilliant at supporting each other on a ground level. But what we needed to work on was that the PMA team, we needed better understanding of what the PMA team do. Our CSU we have got a really large amount of staff that work in the community, so they're quite isolated for us to reach. There was a little sort of wanting to improve knowledge around the investigation processes, and then just being able to sort of coroner's processes and NMC investigations, things are very hush-hush, and staff involved in those processes wanted the opportunity to be able to speak to other members of staff to understand the processes better. And we're a bit of a niche CSU, and as a CSU we're really not very good at accessing wider trust services that are available for all staff. So it was again partly us trying to make everybody aware of what other services that they're entitled to and that they can use. So we set up a working group which was made of people basically people volunteered to be involved that were just interested in this work. And they were thankfully a real big mix of people from different ward areas, community, delivery suite, the anti-postnatal wards, and there was some multidisciplinary representation as well, which was really helpful. And the main challenges we needed to address was that we cannot make the perfect service for everybody, because everybody responds to trauma very differently and everybody wants information in a different way at a different time. And there was a real big sort of appreciation of a lived experience. So we started off with what we thought would be an easy win. One of the feedback we got was that trying to find support services, everything was all over the place. Like there was stuff on the intranet, there was bits, the intranet back a few years ago when we started this work, lots of departments were still developing their area on the intranet, so things were really difficult to find. So we made for our staff basically a little Padlet with all of the support offerings that they have, pretty much all in one place, with links, with the relevant links to the Trust intranet and referral forms of various places. And then I can't do it on this, but if you were to scroll to the right in our Padlet, there's information about different investigation processes that our staff might be involved in. And these are accessible. There's posters all up over our clinical areas. They've got links and QR codes for their phones. So this is what our kind of support process looked like at the start, in the sense that at the time we had a health and wellbeing lead in our CSU. We don't anymore, but the we had the lovely package of stuff that the Trust Health and Wellbeing team provided us with. Our PMAs provide restorative clinical supervision for individuals, just whenever they feel like they need it, really. And obviously team leaders pick up a lot of support for staff on a one-to-one level, and they're quite often with the PMAs, the first port of call for referring to other services. Our doctors have a very, very different sort of structure to us. So it meant that anything that we kind of designed, we really wanted to be inclusive for them as well. They have educational supervisors that they can talk to about cases that they've been involved in, but it's a little bit tricky in that they are obliged to report sort of involvement in incidents to them. So it's not, I think there was a feeling that it's not a completely safe space every time. But there was very much like a really positive culture of sort of ad hoc peer support within our obstetricians and gynecologists and our trainees. And then for frontline staff, we'd have a rapid review following sort of a relatively major clinical incident that fit our criteria. Whether or not the staff got a debrief was very ad hoc. It depended who was working, which consultant or which coordinator was working, and who was available at the time. So it just needed a little bit more consistency. So this is what we were aiming for and what we were aiming to add in. So the PMA service, most of them now are trained in facilitation of cold debrief. We, as far as a post-shift phone line, we're now sort of signposting. There is actually a lot available as far as phone lines for support for staff. So we are signposting to the external and the services that we already have in place for that. We're implementing a service of peer supporters. So for doctors, that could be for absolutely anything. Whether they just need a bit of financial advice, or they're new to the country and they're not sure where to live, or they've had a really bad day at work and they just want to talk about it, or they've been involved in something. We didn't want to overlap with our PMA service too much. So for our midwives, clinical support workers and things, it is a peer support service. It's a bit niche, specifically for people going through an investigation process. So if they've been involved in an incident that's being investigated by MNSI or the coroner, or they've been referred to the NNC or GMC, we will set them up with a buddy who has been through and completed that process, and very much to kind of guide them in what to expect, how long the process would take, what their future sort of handful of months can look like, and to give a little bit more support as well for our team leaders. So quite often we become a leader, but no one really tells you how to. You just sort of all of a sudden you've got this team to support. No one really tells you how to do that. So we have provided nearly all now of our team leaders in our CSU with some training about recognising trauma in your team, how to handle that, what your referral avenues are, and a bit better of an understanding of psychological response to incidents. We're really fortunate. We managed to get some funding for a part-time clinical psychologist and a counsellor for our CSU. So she's picked up, she's got really involved in this work. And then just a little bit more consistency from a debrief perspective for our frontline staff immediately after an incident. So I'll just summarise these really. So basically, what's new? So we've got our department clinical psychologist who offers up to 4 structured sessions, and she's also on the Schwartz Round panel, so she loves selling that. Our team leaders, CRISP stands for Critical Incident Staff Support Pathway, which is born from work that the West Yorkshire Mental Health and Wellbeing Hub set up during COVID. So we've trained most of our maternity team leaders now, and then we've also run we've run our first sort of fundamentals version with our senior leaders as well. Our peer support service officially launched last September. We've got 15 midwives and 5 junior doctors trained to essentially be like a peer support buddy. And a debrief service again launched in September. So at the moment, it's just the sort of what you'd call a cold debrief service up and running. So that's the debrief that staff would receive kind of 2 to 4 weeks after the incident, where the team comes back together to talk about it. And we do have criteria for that, which are very difficult to set, but then we also take kind of ad hoc referrals for anything that teams feel like are impacting them. I won't go too much into this from a time perspective, but this is basically our project in a nutshell. What we needed to achieve, what we've sort of had to put in place, and then the outcomes that we're kind of looking at. We really, at the time when we started this project, we were really struggling, particularly doctors wise, with really high levels of sickness, and retention as well is always an issue. I think particularly after a clinical incident, it's not uncommon for staff to sort of question their career and what they're doing. So it's really to put that support in place to try and prevent that from happening. So basically we get to the West Yorkshire Mental Wellbeing Hub evaluate the training that because we provide it as an extension kind of their service. They evaluate our training and our debrief data for us. So the team leader and the peer support training that we provide, the feedback's really positive. So the orange is before, so they have to do a sort of a before and after questionnaire. The orange is before and the yellow is after. But basically, the feedback kind of showed us people feel like they've got a better understanding of the impact of a traumatic event. They generally feel more confident about signposting and the understanding of trying to get in there early with just some really basic support processes. They feel a bit more confident having a well-being or a mental health support conversation, and they feel sort of more capable to support their teams. Which is really fabulous. And then there's a section on the feedback about the impact on the training on them personally. We thought this was a really nice sort of interesting addition. Some members of staff felt that for them personally, it helped them move on from a traumatic experience. It helped them with their well-being outside work. It helped them feel more connected to their teams. Helped them sort of feel more effective and resilient, and prevented them from being absent. So these were very much sort of secondary. This was not the intent of the training, but some really, really lovely feedback to receive on the side. And there's just some little comments here. I'll give you a few seconds. Awesome. So debrief wise, we're due to receive our next lot of feedback. So we only had November and December's feedback to work from. But basically, I don't think we could have asked for more in this really, and that 100% of people felt that the group was a safe space, 100% of people felt listened to, 100% of people found it helpful, and 100% of people felt like they were taken seriously. So whilst we've not got loads of feedback yet for the debriefs, we couldn't have really asked for any better. And then again, they get asked very similar questions to the people that have received the training, some of the training arms. And again, some really nice feedback that it's helped people with their mental well-being, it's helped them cope with the demands of their role, you know, feeling more cohesive as a team, and it's helping them to move forwards basically. Which is really positive. So really quickly, some challenges I think that anyone will come across when trying to implement a new service. We have got another round of training to increase our pool of debrief facilitators planned for a couple of weeks' time. But certainly I think everybody's felt sort of staffing pressures over winter, so it has been really challenging to try and make sure those debriefs have been done within a timely manner after an incident. purely for it struggling with availability of the facilitators, but hopefully with the next round of training we'll sort of improve that a little bit. And like I said, just staffing challenges generally, trying to get the people that have been involved in an incident, trying to make sure that they're actually able to go to the debrief, whether they're we do give the time back to them if they go on a day off, but if they are working in the clinical area, seeing if we can release them, which certainly over the winter hasn't always been possible. And yeah, room availability, I never expected that personally to be such an issue, but trying to find an available room to train people in is actually really challenging. But thankfully it's been things that with a bit of creative thinking we've managed to overcome. So finally then the last steps, the next steps of our project is implementing that on the shop floor immediately after an incident debrief. So we're just starting sort of stakeholder work with that to put together a model that we want to use and think about how we're going to train the people that will facilitate it. Women's CSU hosted its first Schwartz round, which I believe went really well, and I think there's been some more engagement of that, which has been nice. We've just again started our sort of fundamentals training for our senior management team about sort of recognising trauma and sort of in yourself as well as others, and sort of avoiding burnout and things. And then we would like to expand the team leader training to our delivery suite coordinators and consultants on the shop floor. We have parts of our service, so we do still debrief in gynae, so women's CSU is maternity and gynecology. We do debrief within the gynae service, but their service is going to need to look a little different in the sense that they don't have a PNA. It's not all set up, so we need to do a bit more work with them about how they want their service to look, and how we can best support them as a team. And that is it.
Thanks very much for that. Both of them very different pieces of work, both really important to the to our CSUs. And I know we're out of time, but Jenny, I know that you'll be bursting. So do you want to ask anything, or Rubina or anybody else on the call, just really quickly?
I'd love to. Do you mind? So first of all, Christina, the work you did helped us to put standard work into the corporate way of doing this, as well as you then being able to benefit from that as a CSU. So I think we really do now have a trust-wide process. I guess my question for you, not to answer now, but is, do you think we've now got something that can be fully embedded and sustained? Because I think that's the really important piece. And then Emma, what a really important topic. We're seeing a lot of health and wellbeing work come through the work under the banner of retention, which is great to see. And I loved the fact that you were linking in with both the trust-wide resources and also the West Yorkshire resources, because we do have a lot, and I really recognise your point about we have a lot, but helping busy people on the shop floor to connect with it is probably our biggest challenge. So I absolutely loved what you've done. And again, my question to you is just, how do we make sure that we keep that live and sustainable and really embedded in practice? Because it doesn't feel as if it's going to ease up anytime soon, does it? So brilliant, both of you, absolutely brilliant use of the improvement method.
I wonder if it's possible, Christina, because that's a really important question that Jenny's posed of you there. Would you mind going back to Jenny on that outside the meeting? And similarly, Emma, if you've got any thoughts there as well. I have to say, just on your point about the Schwartz round, I participated in one not so long ago, and I have to say I hadn't anticipated how I would feel when I was in that safe space to be able to share in that way. So the fact that you're able to do that within the CSU, let alone because I went to a sort of like a bigger LTHT one, I just think is tremendous, and we need to think about that, because those types of traumas unfortunately do happen in all areas, don't they? I know midwifery in particular is under huge amount of scrutiny, and the risks involved in that service. But I think it's great, the work that you were doing there. I really do, because it's when you feel like that at work, if something's happened at work that's not gone right, and you take that home, you can't leave it at the door, can you? It goes with you, and being able to support people in that way, I think is just tremendous. I really do, and not just from a work perspective, but just for the whole health and well-being of an individual and their ongoing mental health. I just think it's tremendous. I really do, Emma. Thank you. We're going to leave it there. 2 really brilliant presentations, 2 really important pieces of work. So thank you so much for sharing that today. Take care. Bye.
Brilliant report out. Well done, both of you. Really good.